Deep American South, former federal prosecutor. The Democrat Doug Jones defeating Republican Roy Moore in last night's special election. He's now the first Democratic senator out of Alabama in 25 years. They were separated by a razor-thin margin. It went deep into the night, and at the moment, Moore is not conceding. It's 9 o'clock in New York, 8 o'clock in Alabama. Good morning, wherever you are today. I'm Bill Hemmer, live inside of America's Newsroom. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. What a night last night. I'm Sandra Smith. Doug Jones shocking the nation, defeating Roy Moore by roughly 21,000 votes in one of the reddest of red states. Jones' margin of victory is nearly the same as how many voters backed a write-in candidate. Moore not conceding, but right now a recount is not expected. Here's both men last night.
Realize when the vote is this close that it's not over, and we still got to go by the rules about this recount provision. We also know that God is always in control.
This campaign has been about common courtesy and decency and making sure everyone in this state, regardless of which zip code you live in, is going to get a fair shake in life.
We heard this from the president last night, tweeting saying congratulations to Doug Jones on a hard-fought victory. The write-in votes played a very big factor, but a win is a win. The people of Alabama are great, and the Republicans will have another shot at this seat in a very short period of time. It never ends, send tweets.
Jonathan Siri live in Montgomery, Alabama. Jonathan, how big a role did the allegations against Moore play in this election?
Good morning, Sandra. Well, it seems these allegations were front and center. According to a Fox News voter analysis, 2/3 of Alabama voters said that the allegations against Roy Moore weighed heavily on how they voted in this election, and those voters went overwhelmingly in favor of Doug Jones. In fact, 70% of those voting for Jones said the sexual misconduct allegations against Roy Moore were important to their vote, compared to only 28% of those voting for Moore. Here's what Moore said about this unusual race during his non-concession speech last night.
Part of the problem with this campaign is we've been painted in an unfavorable and unfaithful light. We've been put in a hole, if you will.
And the allegations also played a role in who didn't vote yesterday. Nearly 6 in 10 voters who did not cast a ballot in yesterday's election said the allegations against Roy Moore factored into their decision to stay at home, Sandra.
What challenges does Doug Jones face as a Democrat in a red state, Jonathan?
Yeah, no easy task. Ordinarily, you run for Senate and you win and you're elected to a 6-year term. Well, Doug Jones has been elected to fill the unexpired term of Jeff Sessions, who, of course, left to become Attorney General. And so there's only a few years remaining in his term. So in the year 2020, Doug Jones is already going to have to launch a re-election bid. No easy task as a Democrat in this red state. Now, Jones will likely continue his themes of this election cycle, where he was campaigning on themes of unity and bipartisanship. Listen.
We have shown not just around the state of Alabama, but we have shown the country the way that we can be unified.
Now, the chairman of the Alabama GOP is a little more skeptical and issued a statement saying Alabamians are conservative and have no intentions of moving toward the policies of the Democrat Party. If Mr. Jones aligns himself with the liberal Democrats in Washington, Alabama voters will remember his choices in the 2020 U.S. Senate election. Sandra, back to you.
Jonathan Siri, thank you.
Instant analysis now. Guy Benson's been up all night. Political editor, townhall.com, and a Fox News contributor. Guy, good morning to you.
Good morning, Bill.
Go ahead and just, how do you see the result come out first, and then we'll get into some particulars.
Well, it's an earthquake. There's no getting around that. It reminds me of Scott Brown winning in Massachusetts, taking that seat that was held by Ted Kennedy for so long in 2010, which was a precursor to a major wave election later that same year. I would say, Bill, there's one word that can describe the #1 reason that Roy Moore lost this election, and that word is Republicans. Nothing happens in Alabama politics without Republican voters deciding it should happen. And the Democrats did what they needed to do to get Doug Jones in the ballpark. But ultimately, it was Republican voters who wrote in another name, Republican voters who crossed over for Doug Jones, and thousands upon thousands of Republican voters who sat at home unwilling to support Roy Moore.
I think that last point is very well taken. There's a tendency sometimes to look too much into these outcomes. And over the coming days, we'll let it marinate and see how it settles in. This strikes me. Here's our voter analysis from last night. African Americans went for the Democrat by 87 points, but under the age of 45, wait for it, in red, plus 26 for the Democrat. What do you think about that?
In Alabama, this is a conservative place, and this was, to me, a warning shot for the Republican Party. The future of the party and the future of the conservative movement cannot be and entail people like Roy Moore. Young voters, even in the reddest of precincts, want nothing to do with someone like Roy Moore. Now, you might say, Bill, let's not read too far into this one election because of the distinct challenges, let's put it that way, and flaws of Roy Moore with all these allegations, 9 women. And I think there's some truth to that. I think if you look at some of the exit polling, to me, perhaps one of the biggest data points that stuck out, generally Republican women are married with children. When you look at women who broke heavily for Doug Jones, with a solid majority of women believing the allegations against Roy Moore, women without children went for Doug Jones, the Democrat, relatively narrowly. Mothers went overwhelmingly for Doug Jones. That is a break from the usual pattern. Married women with kids, typically in the Republican column, by 34 points. They went against Roy Moore, and I think we all know why.
Something to watch. What about the agenda in the building behind you now? What happens to that? 12 hours into this.
Sure. Well, now the Republicans have a new sense of urgency on tax reform because Doug Jones, my guess, is that he's going to govern as a liberal. So they want to get that bill finalized and voted on out of conference committee before he is seated. It was always the plan to seat the winner of this special election after Christmas. And so right now they've got just 2 seats to play with. That would go down to 1 seat if they wait. So my guess is the Republican leadership is going to say, let's get this done while we have a little tiny bit more of a cushion, because Roy Moore, a disastrous candidate, really put a lot of things in jeopardy, including the president's agenda with this loss.
Watch Senators Corker and Collins through this. Thank you, Guy. Guy Benson there reporting in Washington, D.C. Thanks for the analysis. Sandra.
A big day on Capitol Hill as Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein gets set to testify before the House Judiciary Committee on Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Meanwhile, we are learning more about those anti-Trump texts sent between former members of Mueller's team, FBI agent Peter Strzok and FBI attorney Lisa Page. In one exchange, Page tells Strzok Trump is a loathsome human. He responds, would he be a worse president than Cruz? She says, Trump, yes, I think so. Strzok then says America will get what the voting public deserves. Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge is live from Washington. Catherine, you've been going through these text messages since Fox acquired them. What stands out to you?
Well, Sandra, good morning. It's really important to read these text messages in the context of the major milestones in the Clinton email and Russia investigations, because it casts these texts in an entirely different light. Let's take a look at one from March of 2016. This is 1 year into the FBI investigation of Hillary Clinton, and they've already confirmed that there was spillage of classified information because of her use of a personal server for government business. And it's in this text that the FBI agent Peter Strzok describes then-candidate Trump as an idiot. Let's look at the next ones from July and August of 2016. This is perhaps the critical window in both investigations because the FBI closes the Clinton email case for the first time and within weeks opens a counterintelligence investigation into Russia and interference in the 2016 election. And it's in these texts that the FBI agent says opened on Trump. That appears to be a reference to the CI case. And then in a follow-up text, he drops the F-bomb on candidate Trump. The other thing that I would mention is that Agent Strzok is not a run-of-the-mill agent. He is if not the senior counterintelligence agent within the FBI. He's one of the top guys, and his job is to track spies and to deal with espionage. And as one of my contacts pointed out, to be sending text messages like this, at the very least, is sloppy and shows very poor judgment, Sandra.
Interesting. And today in that hearing, Catherine, will the Deputy Attorney General be pressed by both sides of the aisle during this hearing?
Well, Sandra, that's exactly what we expect. I'm up outside the House Office building, the Rayburn building, where they will have that testimony from the Deputy AG just behind me about an hour from now. And we expect him to face pretty aggressive questionings from Republicans and Democrats. From Republicans, why does it seem that the Justice Department and the FBI seems to be throwing up roadblock after roadblock when it comes to getting information about the obtaining of surveillance warrants on Trump campaign associates, and then also information on who paid for this dossier within the FBI. Did they pay for this research? And here's just a taste of what we could expect today, and this is the testimony of the FBI director who was here just last week.
Did the FBI pay for a dossier on the president?
Questions about the dossier are something that are better taken up in separate settings.
Did Bob Mueller recruit people to his probe that had a bias against the president?
I can't speak to how Director Mueller staffed or recruited for his team.
One of our contacts is also encouraging us to listen for questions about that tarmac meeting 1 week before Hillary Clinton's FBI interview between then Attorney General Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton, and whether, in fact, there is something that memorializes the conversation on that jet, whether it's an audio tape or a transcript, Sandra.
Catherine Herridge, thank you for your reporting on that. Certainly going to be a busy day on Capitol Hill. Already is.
Important stuff. Yeah, we're going to talk to the chairman in a moment here. Coming up in a few moments, talk with the man who leads that hearing, House Judiciary Chairman Bob Goodlatte is live on deck next. Coming up here, Sandra.
Plus, breaking new details about the accused New York City bomber. What federal officials are now saying about how and when the suspect was radicalized.
Also, President Trump saying he wants that tax bill to sign by Christmas Day. So when can we see a final vote? And what's in it? Kevin Brady, chair of the House Ways and Means Committee, is our guest. Coming up in moments.
We are making good progress. I like the direction we're going. More importantly, I like the timetable that we're going to hit, which is a conference committee report at the end of the week.
We are 45 minutes away. Another hearing on the Hill. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein will be in the hot seat, set to testify before the House Judiciary Committee as we learn more about these text messages. They got an FBI agent booted from Mueller's team a few months ago. Now, Bob Goodlatte's the chairman of the committee. He's the Virginia Republican who joins me now. And, sir, good morning to you, and thank you for coming back. You've seen the text messages, right?
I have begun looking at them. We got them late last night. When I leave here, I'm going to go back and continue and get ready for the hearing.
So our viewers know these are the exchanges between Linda Page and Peter Strzok. Here's part of it. Page says, God, Trump is loathsome human. Strzok says, yet he may win. Good for Hillary. OMG, he's an idiot. God, Hillary should win 100 million times over. That was from March of 2016. You have this from March of 2016. Strzok says, I'm riled up. Trump is the blanking idiot, is unable to provide a coherent answer. I don't know what you think about that already, but do you believe there's a bias at the FBI?
Well, there certainly is a bias on the part of Peter Strzok, and quite frankly, his involvement in this process, going all the way back to those texts and emails that you just read, and many others, by the way, show that all during the investigation of Hillary Clinton's email scandal, which he was heavily involved in, including changing Director Comey's remarks when he said that she was careless instead of grossly negligent, was, in my opinion, showing a strong bias on the part of not only Mr. Strzok, but those who allowed him to do that. And then to put him on this investigative team with former Director Mueller for the special investigation raises an awful lot of questions that are going to be asked today.
Okay, I have a few more questions here. Back to the text message. Again, from Paige. Here's what she wrote, apparently. So, look, you say, this is April of 2016. You say we text on that phone when we talk about Hillary because it can't be traced. You were just venting because you feel bad that you've gone so much that can't be helped right now. That would seem to suggest they knew they should not be talking about these matters. Would you draw that same conclusion?
Oh, absolutely. Here is one of the top counterintelligence agents at the FBI communicating in this fashion. He shouldn't even be doing this to begin with, but to do this in that position shows extreme recklessness, gross negligence on his own part. And obviously one of the questions is, he was removed from this team and transferred to another department in the FBI. Why? Why isn't he out on the street?
So you want him fired?
I want him struck. That's right.
Do you think the Mueller matter has been fair to date?
Well, we're going to ask a lot of questions about that as well. Obviously, a couple of things that concern us greatly. My position at the outset was, let's give former Director Mueller the opportunity to conduct this investigation. We're not going to interfere. But now we see that people like Peter Strzok and others who've had strong bias in favor of Hillary Clinton have been heavily engaged in this process. And secondly, we increasingly see a link between what was going on in the Clinton campaign and the basis for this investigation in the first place may be very, very closely linked. And so those things raise serious questions about the legitimacy of this investigation. We're going to probe that today.
Two more quick questions on this. Do you believe another special counsel is necessary to investigate?
I absolutely think another special counsel is necessary.
On behalf of the FBI, Department of Justice, or both?
We should be looking into what happened with the FBI last year when Director Comey made the decision to step in front of cameras and say that Hillary Clinton wasn't going to be prosecuted. We need to look into how that investigation was conducted, how the report about the investigation was written before the decision was made. Even the witnesses were interviewed. We need to look into the immunities that were granted. There are just endless questions that need to be looked into by an independent special counsel.
We're waiting for that hearing in 40 minutes. Quickly, what
decision was made. Even the witnesses were interviewed. We need to look into the immunities that were granted. There are just endless questions that need to be looked into by an independent special counsel.
We're waiting for that hearing in 40 minutes. Quickly, what
Andrew, it's another eerie morning here just outside of Santa Barbara. The hillside behind me looks more like a volcano, and it's continuing to rain ash. This is now the 5th largest wildfire in modern California history. The good news, though, the weather conditions have been favorable for firefighters since this weekend. We're still in a red flag warning until Friday, but this fire has raced through 236,000 acres, has destroyed more than 900 homes and buildings, and has filled this entire area with smoke, leaving residents desperate for fresh air.
My wife and I are, living moment by moment.
My mom had a lung transplant 4 years ago, and so she has she has pulmonary fibrosis. I'm so concerned. We just left our house just to see what the conditions are like, and it's really bad.
More good news. Firefighters have gained the upper hand on all the other fires burning across Southern California. We've also learned the cause for the Skirball fire, which you may remember started in Bel Air there in Los Angeles. That was from an illegal cooking fire. As for the cause of the Thomas fire behind me, that's still under investigation. Sandra.
Will Carr, thank you for your reporting on the ground there.
From one end of the country to the other, Republicans in Congress trying to deliver on the president's promise. Tax cuts for Christmas. Will that happen? Kevin Brady is behind all of this. He's writing the bill. He's live to tell us how the process is going today.
Looking forward to getting an update from him. Plus, the suspect in the New York City subway bombing getting set to appear before a judge today as we learn more about his plot to kill Americans.
Officers also found a passport there in Ula's name with handwriting that included one particularly chilling note. And I quote, "Oh, America, die in your rage."
9:30 here in New York now. The suspect behind that bombing Monday morning on a New York City subway line will face a judge for the first time today. That legal proceeding likely will happen inside of a hospital room where the suspect is being held. He's also, we found yesterday, posted on Facebook, "Trump, you failed to protect your nation." Rick Leventhal back live here in New York City outside now, and authorities have made a lot of progress in this. What are you hearing, Rick? Good morning.
Good morning, Bill. Forgive me for crying my way through this live shot. It feels like 9 degrees in the city this morning, but investigators have gathered a significant amount of evidence in this case. They've made tremendous progress, thanks in large part to the suspect himself, who waived his Miranda rights from his hospital bed on Monday afternoon and told authorities how and why he strapped that bomb to his belly and tried to kill himself and others in a pedestrian tunnel under the Port Authority. Kayed Ola said he did it for the Islamic State. He wanted to punish the U.S. for attacking ISIS overseas, so he built that pipe bomb and filled it with screws and used a Christmas light as part of the trigger and chose the busy bus terminal on a Monday morning to maximize casualties.
As alleged, the location and timing of his planned attack was no accident, and his motivation was no mystery.
Ullah faces 5 federal counts, and those will likely be presented to him today in his hospital room. We haven't confirmed it yet, but he's still recovering from injuries that he received. So they may go to his room and set up a video conference with a judge sometime today, Bill, to present him those charges.
The other thing in this story is how he was able to get into the country in 2011. What more do you have on that today do you think is relevant at the moment?
Well, he obtained his visa through the extended family chain migration, part of the family immigrant program. An uncle in Bangladesh won his visa through a lottery, and was then able to get Ullah's mother and siblings and Ullah in just before his 21st birthday. 3 years later, authorities say Ullah began his radicalization watching ISIS videos online, and a year ago started researching on how to build a bomb. The president says this visa system has to be fixed.
There have now been 2 terrorist attacks in New York City in recent weeks carried out by foreign nationals here on green cards. The first attacker came through the visa lottery, and the second through chain migration. We're going to end both of them.
Ullah has a wife and child in Bangladesh, and authorities have gone to them in Bangladesh and interviewed the wife and her parents. And the wife, apparently, according to the AP, told authorities that Ullah, on his last visit there, had talked to her about a radical Muslim preacher in Bangladesh.
Wow.
Bill.
Thank you, Rick. On a cold morning here in Manhattan, Rick Leprechaun, thanks.
He's going to make the case America's fallen so far behind and this code's become so complex. We got to act now. And so people who talk about let's have more study, let's have more hearings, look, less talking, more doing, that's what the president's, my guess is he's going to make that case.
President Trump will make his closing argument on tax reform in remarks at the White House later today. This comes as congressional Republicans race to the finish line to merge those House and Senate tax bills. A final vote could come as soon as early next week. Joining me now is Texas Republican Congressman Kevin Brady, one of the key architects of the House Republican tax bill and chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee. A busy day for you, sir. So thank you for coming on with us. Mr. Chairman, are you making progress?
Yeah, we are making progress. There's a couple things. One, this is a historic day for the American people. They're going to get to watch for the first time in 31 years a conference committee on tax reform open to the public that everyone can watch. So you're going to hear about the debate and the benefits and doubling the standard deduction. On the progress, we are making good progress there. And we're on exactly the same timetable we set 6 months ago, which is to deliver this to the president's desk by Christmas time. We're on that timetable. I feel good about hitting it.
Will there be a vote next week?
So I leave that to Leader McCarthy, but that's the schedule that we've been on for a long, long time. So I expect that to happen.
All right. So where do the biggest differences remain between the House and the Senate at this moment?
Yeah, so lots of common ground here and lots of press reports about different areas. But you know how these big negotiations go, which is nothing's finalized till everything is. And so, look, we're just working through how do we deliver the strongest middle-class tax cut? How does America become competitive now? So I think, we've been all working toward making sure all our businesses receive and families receive tax relief now. And so, look, there is some differences. We're closing the differences in a big way.
You know, one of those areas where you mentioned there's a lot of chatter and a lot of talk is about the corporate tax rate. Both the House and the Senate agreed on that 20% corporate tax rate after the president originally pushed for 15%. But now he's sort of signaled that he's open to negotiation there. Is there wiggle room on the corporate tax rate to go higher?
So I think the president did a really smart thing, which is to provide the flexibility to try to drive down rates, whether you're a small business, a larger one, or you're a family. And so by him doing that, that's really allowed us to work with the Senate to deliver the best rates possible. So I can't comment on that, any final decisions and the details on this yet. But by the end of the week, the American public's going to see this complete conference committee report.
Okay. The top individual tax rate in the House, 38.5%. In the Senate, 39.6%. Are you considering lowering that at all? Considering right now one of the big criticisms is that the wealthiest taxpayers fear that their taxes will go up under these plans.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we seem to get hit by all sides. Some say tax relief for the wealthy. Others say, no, there's tax increases for the wealthy. So I guess my point is wait for the final bill. I know for the state and the SALT states, where the local governments just hammer families, we know we want to do more. And part of that is looking at deductions. Part of that is lowering that top rate. But I know this, so that typical family of four in, say, Wheaton, Illinois, already will see a tax cut of $4,200, and we're not done yet. And Illinois is a high-tax state, so I think we're making very good progress on getting these families real relief.
Well, when you talk about SALT, you just wonder, is that scaling back SALT, those state and local tax deductions, is that a risk that you're hearing some are willing to make at this point?
So a risk from what standpoint?
Are you willing to make changes there? We had Pete King from New York on this week. He still cannot be a yes on this because he uses very strong language when he says this will be brutal for the people of his state.
Yes, Sandra, the answer is absolutely. In fact, we made that commitment when the House bill passed that we would work with our state and local lawmakers, especially from California, New York, New Jersey, to deliver even more relief. We have a simple principle here. Let's let people keep more of what they earn wherever they live, even though these states are just brutally taxing the state and local and property taxes. We still believe that we ought to deliver relief.
Does the outcome of last night's election in Alabama, does that increase the pressure on your party to get this done?
I don't think so, nor does it change the timetable. We're exactly on the one we'd announced, I think, roughly 6 months ago. You know, I think we've put pressure on ourselves that this is, look, our tax code is a monster, and it's really hurting America and families. You know, we pledged to change it and make it simpler and more pro-growth and more competitive. So we're going to deliver on that and deliver it soon.
Why do you think it's been such a tough sell? You know, the president this afternoon is expected to welcome families at the White House, make his closing arguments, if you will, when it comes to pushing for this tax reform. I know there's a big lunch with the president as well today. Why is it such a tough sell for your party?
Well, I think it's because it's a tough task. Look, Washington, the status quo, all that is President Reagan found the same thing. You know, this is just a tough challenge. And here, I know Washington Democrats, for example, for that family four in Wheaton, you know, they look at $4,200 and they sneer at it like, hey, that's nothing. But I tell you what, for those families, it's a lot. And to do that, we have to change the code top to bottom. It is just the political challenge, really, of any generation. And so I think taxpayers are going to be really pleased with the outcome of this report in just a couple days.
All right. Well, I know you have a very busy day with the president, and then next week, possibly a vote coming. The schedule still by Christmas. We'll see where this goes. By the way, interesting mention, Wheaton, my hometown.
Oh,
happens to be. I don't know if you knew that. Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for coming on.
Thanks, Sandra.
Big shout out to Wheaton, Illinois this morning. You're right about the calendar, right?
Yes.
The 22nd of December is next Friday. That's the time they want to have a vote done by.
Few days left.
If it slides past the first of the year, it would appear that all bets are off. But a little of a bump in each direction every day.
I'm hearing optimism from the chairman.
Go through this and go through that.
We'll see.
I know. Also, in a moment here, what is Rex Tillerson saying now about North Korea?
We're ready to talk anytime they'd like to talk. But they have to come to the table, and they have to come to the table with a view that they do want to make a different choice.
So now what are the prospects for diplomacy? Talks face-to-face with Kim Jong-un and others? Is he willing to negotiate? We'll have all that coming up for you in a moment.
And the upset last night in Alabama. What will Doug Jones' victory and Roy Moore's loss mean for President Trump's agenda in Washington?
That should have been held by a Republican. He was a fundamentally flawed candidate. The Republican was. He had a lot of problems. He was not the candidate that Donald Trump supported or endorsed in the primary.